grade copper, and then we put them into the foot shear, and handbrakes, and punches, and rollers, and crimpers, and then once a part kit gets assembled by one of our parts crew, then it gets passed over to guys like Jeb and I who will assemble them, and then our lights at the end of the day go back over to our shop on Conti Street where we will oxidize them, put in all the guts and the glass and everything. We have to fabricate a bracket for it, so really from start to finish, the process takes us about 2 days, and because we have 50 guys on staff at 4 production shops in the city, we're usually able to maintain about a 4 to 5 week lead time, but everything is being made to order and tweaked just a little bit here and there depending on what the architecture demands. So we have about 500 different variations on our lights and bracket combinations and fennials and stuff like that that you can do. And that being the case, what we generally are having people do is take advantage of a complimentary design service that we offer, where we'll take a look at some photos of your house as well as some measurements, and from there help you determine a scale and a style that will match your architecture. We kind of go forward from there. And obviously most of these are based off of historic designs, but we also do some stuff that's fairly contemporary, and also have a full line of handmade iron chandeliers, copper pendant lights. We just introduced a line of table lamps, so new stuff is coming up all the time, without a doubt. And of course, you're not far from one of the, in my opinion, best examples of our work. We actually did all the lights for the San Diego Gas Light District, as well as some other ones around the country. But most of what we do nowadays does not end up really sticking around Louisiana. Most of the lights that we create end up shipping out of state, so at this point you have been able to find our lights in all 50 states and almost 50 countries. They've gone just about everywhere. They also don't necessarily need to be gas. Actually, in a given week we will probably end up making more electric ones than we do gas. It just really depends on what the, not only does the architecture demand, but also how much light is really needed. As pleasant as the gas flame is, it's equivalent only to about a 25 watt light bulb, so it's not throwing out a ton of light, but it certainly has a look of all its own. Yeah, we have, you know, it kind of is tough sometimes because we can't actually copyright any of our styles. So you'll find a lot of companies out there that have lights that look a lot like ours. But the one thing that sets us apart is that we actually have 2 patents on our gas jet assembly. And it is to the point now where in a month, running it continuously, it will consume less fuel than the pilot light of a hot water heater will. So we say that the national average for fuel consumption on them is between $5 to $7 a month, and obviously that's going to vary depending on how high you keep the flame and also what your municipal gas cost is. And you know, for example, New Orleans gas is awfully cheap, so I have one on my house. I let it run all the time, and it is about $3 a month. So. And of course, you actually do end up with more options in our electric lights. You can use more of a vanity glass. You can use frosted glass, heated glass. You can get lights on hanging chains and stuff like that, which you're faced with a few limitations with doing gas one. So. And there's a few other improvements that we've made over the past 5-10 years. For instance, now we also, if it's a gas light, we're putting in tempered glass because you know, you send this up to, say, northern Minnesota, it gets down to -20 in the winter, and then you have a gas flame beside it. There's a possibility of some bursting, so we like to throw the tempered stuff in there. Unless it's a custom light, then we're still hand cutting that stuff in-house as well. Good morning, guys. Now this company is actually into its 4th generation of being family owned. We started operations here in the French Quarter in 1945, and actually the majority of the equipment that Jeb and I use in the morning on Conti Street is stuff that our founder had picked up when he opened the business, and he was able to get a lot of that from war surplus from the Higgins shipyard. So a lot of that tooling was busy cranking out landing craft for World War II before we kind of repurposed it. Still does the job, but certainly doesn't have all those convenient safety features like finger guards and stuff like that. So keep an eye out while you're using it, without a doubt. Really, the only automated tool that we use while we assemble these is the power drill. Everything else is all old hand and foot actuated equipment. And of course, we're riveting everything together on the light so that it is still free to expand and contract. It can move around in winds and heat and cold. We try to shy away from soldering as much as we can, just because that non-flexible joint over time, the metal will fatigue and those joints will give out. So the only spot that we do solder on every single light is just the two corners of the door, so that it will ensure to keep its shape. And another thing to keep in mind is that we also don't send them out to you in this raw form. We actually do an oxidation bath to the lights that get it to a nice caramel color finish, or we can go a little darker than that, that'll put it at more of a bronze or a gunmetal look. And the whole goal of that is not only to make it look as though it's been on the house for about 10 or 15 years, but mainly to ensure that it's going to age evenly. And what happens down the road is subject to all sorts of, where you're subjecting it to environment-wise. If you're right directly on the seashore, it's going to turn green awfully quick. And of course, if you're in the middle of the desert, you might not ever see it turn green at all. Now, because we're making the lights in-house in 2 orders, that also is including the brackets. So if you are directly on that seashore, we will offer you one that's made out of naval brass instead of steel or wrought iron, so you don't have to get out there and paint it every few years or potentially replace it. And we have to keep up with other building code factors that are common in certain areas. For instance, our electric lights that we do in the Gulf Coast of Florida, sometimes that's in an area that requires turtle shield, so we have to use a specific light that projects straight down. There are several states in the country that put extra additives into their natural gas that tends to be a little bit corrosive towards copper when it's in its gaseous state, so we use a special tin-lined supply line for the light that we provide. And just want to make sure that it's going to be up and running for a couple of generations. As a matter of fact, the alley that's behind us here is a pretty good example of our work, because we have lights out there that are as young as 6 months old and as old, as old as 60 years out there that have been up and running continuously. Of course, the really old gas lights that you find around New Orleans, a lot of those were ones that we have worked on over time, because when we started the metal shop in '45, it was pretty much anything and everything out of copper, from medical equipment to stove vent hoods to pretty much whatever. And then we found that there were a lot of GIs who came back from Europe with lights that had fallen in London and Paris and Brussels, all over the place, and they would bring them into the shop. The founder would check them out, find out that most of them were held together with big blobs of lead, so he would dismantle the light, take it apart, take all of that lead out, rivet it back together, and that's why you see it up and running today. The other big factor that got us into doing gas lights specifically is a very special relationship that we share with a famous Louisiana architect named A. Hayes Town, who actually designed the light that I'm building right now. This is a 21-inch French quarter light, and architecturally and scale-wise is about the most neutral one that we do, so we do an awful lot of this specific style and size. And it certainly keeps us busy. And of course, if you're doing something a little bit more modern, we also can build lights in stainless steel. We've done sheet brass ones as well. It really depends on what the house calls for. We like to say that the house actually designs the light for you. So we have had to talk people down several times as to different sizes and quantities that they wanted to do, and just try to keep it as simple as you can. Absolutely.
So this is the Napoleon House on Brennan's Bracket. So it was originally designed for Napoleon House Restaurant on Charter Street, which I pointed out to you when we first walked through 316. You can also see that this light's aging, meaning the copper is beginning to turn colors. Copper has a natural aging process, or patina, and the rate at which that happens is greatly influenced by the amount of salt in the salt air environment. For instance, lights in Florida turn green like the Statue of Liberty in as little as a year. Here, it takes 30 to 50 years in New Orleans, just to put that into perspective. So this light you can see has begun to turn a little bit. It happens first in the corners and then simply will continue until it reaches the entire fixture. Okay, so this is the BEVOLO Williamsburg fixture. It's probably almost 70 years old. It's been in the exchange alley for quite a while. You can see that the copper has begun to verde or turn green, just like the Statue of Liberty. That can take almost 50 years in New Orleans, and so it's been up here for quite a while. It's still looking so good because it's riveted together, just like the boats and airplanes that Mr. BEVOLO Sr. built way long ago. We still make this fixture today. It comes in 7 different sizes, flush and bracket mount, and you can add that stack.
So if you're on coastline or sitting out on the Hudson today, that green comes in pretty. How you doing?
Hey guys, morning. You guys doing all right today?
Yeah, just taking a look. I was just saying it'd be cool if we got to see how they're making it.
Man,
You lucked out. When we went over to town. Only thing that kind of threw us for a curve is that once we opened, people immediately started asking to rent the space out. So we've had some weddings and book signings and stuff.
Right. What is the tip that you guys use for the like the flame? It looks like it's a ceramic thing.
It is ceramic, and really that's what's giving it its efficiency. Is it's making the flame fan out. So it looks like it's this great big gas flame in there, but if you look at it from the side, it's like a tiny little slit. So that's why you see them up running all the time. What part of LA are you in?
The burbs. Like 15 minutes in from Malibu, Bora, Thousand Oaks, Woodland Hills.
Been through there a couple of times. Got a wife that grew up in Carlsbad, and we were in Oakland together for a while, so we've spent a little bit of time everywhere in between.
Absolutely. Bet you're missing in and out.